In this lesson, we're going to be discussing guidelines for creating successful sketches. You can use several methods to create closed shapes. You can use tools such as rectangles, circles, polygons, or you can constrain sketch geometry so that separate sketch elements come together to create a closed shape. At times, you may need to create a sketch geometry that is not closed. For example, the path for a sweep or to create a surface. However, most of the time you want to create closed geometry. It's a good practice to make sure that whenever you're sketching that you always close your geometry. Some of the guidelines for creating successful sketching: keep the sketch simple. Do not fillet the corners of a sketch if you can apply the fillet to the edge of the finished 3D feature and achieve the same effect. Complex sketch geometry can be difficult to manage as designs evolve. Repeat simple shapes to build more complex shapes. In the earlier lesson, I mentioned that as a small child, you're taught to draw Mickey Mouse by drawing several circles over and over again, and you get the Mickey Mouse famous head and nose and eyes. It's the same kind of concept. We're going to use very simple shapes and build up many of them to get that repeated design. Use 2D constraints to stabilize the sketch shape before size. Use the default dimensions until the shape is stabilized. What this means is don't worry about precise input. Try to get the shape down and the rough design down before you start constraining it with dimensions. And then always try to use closed loops whenever possible. Here's an example of some sketching guidelines. The sketch on the left was created by using rough corners or square corners and then adding fillets and chamfers after the fact. The sketch on the right was created by actually adding the fillets and chamfers into the sketch itself. And you'll notice how much busier the sketch on the right is than the sketch on the left. The other issue with this is later on, if I decide I want to change those fillets or chamfers, I have to dig down and find out what sketch this part was made with. On a single object like this where you have one or two features, it's not that big of a deal. But if you have hundreds of features that make up a very complex part, it can be very hard to figure out what sketch fillets and chamfers are in, whereas the browser automatically gives you all the fillets and chamfers. And so you can actually filter down to just the fillets and chamfers and hover over each one to see which one you need to edit. It makes it much easier if you add the fillets and chamfers as a feature, not into the sketch. Now let's do an exercise to create a 2D sketch. When we get finished, we'll have a part that looks something like this. To start with, we'll click the New command. This time, let's use the metric IPT. Standard millimeters fine. Click on it, click Create. I have mine set up to ask me what plane I want to put the sketch on. You may have yours set up to automatically give you the sketch. If it's not automatically there, click on Create 2D Sketch. So now we're in the sketching environment. We're going to go up to the Line command. And we're going to come down here. We're going to just drag this line out. It doesn't have to be perfect. I want it to be about 25 millimeters. And I'm going to come up here and just kind of eyeball how big I want the circle to be. And then I am going to come down and make sure that it connects with the end. And I'm checking to make sure that I've got my parallel and my tangent constraints. And I'll come down and close it. I want it to look something like this. It doesn't have to be perfect, just something like this. To get you used to this, we're not even going to fully constrain this sketch. We're going to leave it unconstrained. Because right now, what we're concerned about is getting the geometric constraints, not necessarily the dimensional constraints. So let's hit right click, OK. Right click again, and say Show All Constraints. You'll notice everything looks good except for it didn't pick up the tangent constraint on the top. So I'm going to go up here to Tangent and add my tangent constraint in there. Finish. Now you do notice that it didn't automatically give me the tangent glyph, and that's because I have to hit F8 again or right click and say Show All Constraints to basically refresh those images and get that glyph to show up and show me that I have that in there. Once I get that done, that's all I'm concerned about. I want to make sure my geometry is in the proper shape now. and it is. So I'm going to say Finish Sketch. I'm going to go to Extrude. I'm going to extrude this 5 millimeters. Hit OK. Now I'm going to do a secondary sketch based on this first sketch. So I hit Create 2D Sketch. I'm going to come up and do a 2-point rectangle. My first point, I'm going to come and hover over the corner of the existing geometry that was automatically projected. When I get my green dot, I'll left click and I'll drag down. When I get down to this bottom line down here, you'll notice I get a different glyph. It's telling me that this is coincident to this bottom line, meaning that this rectangle is going to snap to this rectangle. And that's exactly what I want. I want to make sure I don't accidentally grab the center because I don't want it to be that big. Somewhere, I don't know, around 5 millimeters is fine. I'm not going to type it in. I just want it to be rough. Finish. I'm going to go to Extrude again. Here in the top. Select Extrude. And this time, I'm actually going to grab my arrow right here and adjust my height. You can see I can just drag it to about where I want it to be. I'm going to drag mine to about 7.5. You can see Inventor tries to pop into kind of some even increments here, and it does a pretty good job of letting me pick 7.5. Okay. You can rotate it around and look at the front of it. And now I've created a primary and a secondary sketch inside this object. You can see how simple it is to sketch and build complex shapes from very simple shapes. Remember, keep it simple and try to build as many objects as you can into features, not into sketch elements. When I'm finished with the part, I'm going to go to Save. It's going to ask me what do I want to call it. I say 0209. Let's call it Guidelines for Creating Successful Sketches. You can call it whatever you want to call your part. And you can save it into your default test project file that you want to use. Done saving, close, and we're finished.